The Norman Empire, from Vikings to kings. From the storm-tossed seas of Scandinavia, a people once feared as raiders evolved into architects of kingdoms. They called themselves Northmen, seafarers, settlers, survivors. Within 2 centuries, their descendants would rule from the grey cliffs of England to the sunlit shores of Sicily. This is the story of the Norman Empire, an unlikely saga of ambition, conquest, and transformation. The Makers of Normandy. Our story begins in the late 9th century. Viking warbands were raiding the coasts of France, burning monasteries and ransacking towns along the Seine River. But one Viking leader, Rollo, saw an opportunity beyond plunder. In 911 CE, after years of warfare, the Frankish king Charles the Simple made a bold deal. He granted Rollo and his followers land around the lower Seine River in exchange for peace and protection. That land would be called Normandy, the land of the Northmen. Under Rollo's leadership, the wild Norse adventurers began to settle. Over generations, they learned the French language, adopted Christianity, and absorbed Frankish law and customs. Yet the fire of the Vikings still burned in their hearts. Close-up of a blacksmith at work, forging a sword. Within 2 centuries, the Normans became not merely raiders but skilled horsemen, castle builders, and administrators. They had mastered warfare and statecraft. A duke with a destiny panorama of medieval Normandy. Castle towers pierce clouds, church bells echo. By the 11th century, Normandy had become one of the most powerful duchies in Europe. Its ruler, William, was born in 1028, the illegitimate son of Duke Robert I and a tanner's daughter named Herleva. Because of his birth, they called him William the Bastard. But illegitimacy could not contain his ambition. When William became Duke of Normandy as a child, rivals circled him like wolves. He survived rebellions, assassination attempts, and betrayal. By sheer will and a talent for command, he forged Normandy into a disciplined, unified state. William's eyes, however, looked beyond his borders, across the Channel, to a throne. The road to Hastings. In distant England, another drama unfolded. After years of peace, King Edward the Confessor died in January 1066, leaving no heir. The English nobles crowned Harold Godwinson, Earl of Wessex. But William claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier, and that Harold had sworn an oath to support him. To William, Harold's coronation was not merely a disappointment, it was a betrayal. So the Duke of Normandy gathered his knights, archers, and shipbuilders. He gained the blessing of the Pope, a powerful sign that his cause was righteous. Then, in the late summer of 1066, with a fleet of hundreds of ships, he set sail across the English Channel. After days of peril at sea, the Norman army landed at Pevensey. They built fortifications, ready for the inevitable clash. Cinematic buildup. Horses neighing, banners flying, drums rising. On October 14, 1066, the 2 armies met near Hastings. The battle raged all day, shield walls clashing, arrows whistling through the sky. At a decisive moment, William feigned retreat, drawing the English from their strong line. Then the Normans turned and crushed them. By twilight, Harold was dead, struck, legend says, by an arrow to the eye. In that single day, the course of England's history turned. The crown and the castle soft organ music, scenes of coronation and construction. On Christmas Day, 1066, William the Conqueror was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. The Viking bloodline had climbed from coastal raiders to crowned monarchs. But victory demanded maintenance. England was restless. The old Anglo-Saxon nobles rebelled, Viking raiders returned, and Wales and Scotland tested William's strength. The Normans replied with iron and stone. They built castles, hundreds of them. Towering fortresses like the Tower of London and Warwick Castle stamped the landscape with symbols of Norman authority. Each castle was part fortress, part administrative hub, part reminder. The Normans were here to stay. Norman feudalism reshaped English society. Lands were divided among loyal knights. The Domesday Book of 1086 recorded every cow, acre, and villager, testimony to the order William enforced on his newfound realm. Yet the conquest was not only military. The Normans brought new art, language, and architecture. The English tongue began to shift, absorbing thousands of French words. Over generations, Anglo-Saxon and Norman cultures blended into something entirely new: English. Beyond the Channel, Norman ambition in the Mediterranean. While William's Normans remade England, other Norman adventurers were carving out empires far to the south. In the early 11th century, groups of Norman knights, second sons, and restless warriors wandered into southern Italy as mercenaries. The region was a patchwork of Lombard princes, Greek towns, Arab strongholds, and Byzantine governors, a perfect playground for the bold and opportunistic. Among them rose the Hauteville family, a clan of daring brothers, led by men like Robert Guiscard and Roger. Robert Guiscard, whose name meant the crafty, united much of southern Italy by force and cunning. His brother Roger crossed to Sicily, then ruled by Muslim emirs. Campaign by campaign, the Normans fought across the island. By 1091, the crescent banners were lowered, and Sicily was theirs. Yet the Norman rulers of southern Italy were not crude conquerors. Under their reign, especially that of Roger II of Sicily, the island became a shimmering crossroads of cultures: Latin, Greek, and Arab. Palermo's palaces glowed with golden mosaics and Arabic inscriptions. Scholars from across the Mediterranean gathered in Norman courts, translating texts, measuring stars, and blending traditions. If William's England forged a new nation through might, Roger's Sicily forged harmony through diversity. Crusaders and kings. The Norman spirit of adventure did not rest. When the call for the First Crusade sounded in 1095, Norman knights were among the first to answer. Bohemond of Taranto, son of Robert Guiscard, marched east with zeal and ambition. His army crossed Anatolia and besieged Antioch, one of the great cities of the East. After months of starvation and cunning diplomacy, Bohemond captured it in 1098. He crowned himself Prince of Antioch, extending Norman rule deep into the heart of the Levant. By then, the Normans had become something extraordinary. Descendants of Vikings ruling Christian kingdoms on 3 continents, from Britain's green hills to Italian coasts and Near Eastern Crusader states. Their banners bore crosses instead of dragon heads, but the fierce determination of their ancestors still pulsed beneath the heraldry. The legacy of power and paradox. By the 12th century, the Norman world reached its zenith. Henry I, Henry II, and their descendants carried the Norman legacy forward, building the Plantagenet dynasty that would dominate England and parts of France for centuries. In Sicily, the prosperity of Roger II's court astonished travelers. Muslim architects, Byzantine artists, and Latin scholars worked side by side. The Palatine Chapel in Palermo remains an enduring masterpiece, a cathedral adorned with Arabic calligraphy and Christian iconography, beneath a golden dome that still gleams. But empires forged in ambition rarely endure without fracture. As generations passed, Norman unity dissolved. England's kings waged bloody wars in France. Sicily fell under foreign rulers. The Principality of Antioch withered amid crusader rivalries. Still, what the Normans built endured in other forms: the governance structures, the castles that still dot the countryside, the blending of languages and cultures that shaped medieval Europe. Epilogue. From the North Sea to the Mediterranean. The Normans began as Viking exiles, searching for land and legacy. In 2 centuries, they transformed from sea wolves into empire makers. They conquered not just by sword, but by skill, absorbing, adapting, reorganizing. Their genius wasn't only in taking, but in reshaping what they took. They gave England its feudal law and stone castles. They gave Sicily a golden age of multicultural brilliance, and in doing so, they turned fragments of Europe into connected worlds. If you stand today in the shadow of the Tower of London, or beneath the shining mosaics of Palermo's chapels, you stand in the echo of that Norman energy, a fusion of Viking spirit and European imagination. Soft wind, distant bells. Their story reminds us how swiftly history can turn strangers into settlers, invaders into builders, and conquerors into kings. The Norman Empire was never a single realm on a map. It was a mindset, restless, ambitious, and transformative. From the cold fjords to the warm Sicilian sands, the Northmen who became Normans left behind not ruins but the foundation stones of nations.